Okay, in this final video, we're going to create our chord. Now, we've been using some really cool tools here, but I want to show you there's even more fun ways to edit our 2D shapes than just using these modifiers. Now, here I'm going to use the magnifying lens to zoom out a bit because I want to see a little bit more around my lamp. I'll use my hand tool to kind of move it around. Same thing here. I'll zoom out, move around in 3D. Now I'm going to use my line tool, and I'm going to create the chord coming out of my lamp. Now for this, how you want to make your chord look or how long you want it or any of that stuff is kind of up to you. So I will say I'm going to click and drag on all of these elements because I don't want a sharp edge. It's supposed to be a chord. So even the first one, except for the first one, I kind of clicked and dragged. Even that one could be a Bezier curve, but it's not necessary. Here I'm going to go to vertex, and I can again move and edit any of these shapes now or even later. So I can make my chord look a little bit nicer. Again, I feel like I want it to be a little more circular looking. That's a real word, right? Sure. All right, you can kind of see from the top view, I'm liking the look of that. Now, obviously, it's still flat. It's right in the middle of the lamp. We need a little bit of work, but that's looking pretty good. I will say if you did accidentally grab this and turned it into a straight edge or a Bezier edge, you can change it by right-clicking and going into this contextual menu, and you can see Bezier is what you get by clicking and dragging, but corner is what you get by just clicking. So you can convert from one to the other. Again, set the corner. Now I'll change to Bezier. And now it has that handle again. You can also see there's a few other types in there. Smooth will just kind of guesstimate the curve based on the other ones around it. I like it when something's super weird. Like you can kind of do that as a quick fix, but it's not something I use a lot. Bezier corner is a nice one because it actually creates the handle just like a Bezier, but they're separate. So you can use that to create some kind of fun and different shapes. So you can see if I wanted a point and then to go on. It doesn't really make sense for a chord, so I'm going to go back to Bezier and do it. Or again, if it's too extreme, I don't like that, I can always go to smooth. It'll smooth it out. I could either leave it on smooth or change it to Bezier, but it's fine. Like again, smooth creates a nice flowing edge on your curves. Okay, so kind of a quick fix. So one thing I might want to do is I'm going to need to move these shapes. Now, in all the other videos, I told you don't use the perspective viewport, right? We're going to keep everything flat in 2 dimensions, and that's true. About 85-90% of the time when you're working with 2D shapes, you want them to stay 2-dimensional. You use the modifier to convert them into a 3D version. You don't edit the 2D shapes in 3D because you get some really, really weird geometry. Like if I look at my front view, let me hit G to turn off this grid. You can see it better. Notice the geometry looks pretty nice, right? Everything looks aligned and straight. It looks pretty good. It looks like the number of partitions on my lampshade might have been a little funky because they don't quite line up perfect. So if I did something like 20, it probably would have looked a little bit sharper, but nothing looks weird or askew. Again, I can hit G and turn back on that grid if I want it. Down here in perspective view, you can see there's that spline we just drew for the chord. Now, here I'm going to break the rules. Now, I will say this in 3D. You're going to break the rules, right? I'm going to say, don't do this. And now we're going to do it. Because for this, I do want the spline to be moved in 3 dimensions. I'm not going to be using a modifier to change the shape. I'm going to be using something else. So for this, I can use either the left view, front view, perspective view, etc. But I'm going to move this around. Now I do need to move, it looks like, this spline because that's going to be the back of the base. I wish I could turn off email alerts. But let's go ahead and move this down. Maybe it's on the ground, like the lamp's on a table and the chord's on the ground, for example. Now here you can see smooth. Notice it's trying to lift it up. So here's where I would either need to move this one down, try to keep it flat and realistic, or go back to Bezier. I'm going to even grab this one and move it up a bit. We can even move the handles in 3 dimensions. We haven't up to now because, if you don't know what you're doing, it can make some funkiness. And then we're going to move this one up because it's going to be plugged into the wall, right? So again, we can move this stuff around, even though I said not to do it in 3D right now, because we're going to turn this into a 3D model directly. So for that, I probably do want to move it around in 3D to change it to how it looks, how I like it. And we can continue editing it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click over here in rendering. Instead of converting this to something else or adding a modifier, we're just going to make it renderable in and of itself. So I'm going to click Enable and Render and Enable and Viewport. That's going to change it from a spline. And if we zoom in, you'll be able to see it, to actual geometry. It's kind of hard to get in close enough. Here, we'll make this full screen. So you can see here, you can actually see the geometry. Now it looks a little rough, so we can change our settings. So I can change thickness. Here, I'll bump it up a whole lot just so you can really see what's happening. Looks like it's terrible for a cord, but it's easy to see. It kind of looks more like a hose. If I wanted to model a rubber hose, again, I could use the same trick for that. I can change the number of sides, which is the number around, if that's looking rough, but 12 is more than enough. In fact, I might even lower it. Remember, we don't need to add complexity unless we need it. Yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll put it like 10 is fine. We'll just leave it there. All right. And then the other thing we can come down here is, let's see, where are we at? Thickness, sides, angle, looking good. I got auto smooth turned on. I like that. All right, it's looking pretty good. Here, I need to go to the line itself. So where are? Sorry, my computer's acting laggy. I was trying to find the interpolation here, but there it is at the very bottom for some reason. Sometimes these menus can be moved around, so I'm looking for interpolation. Interpolation is actually how complex the line is itself. If we turn on edged faces, or if I go to one of my other viewports, you can really see it. See here, you can see the actual lines, right? If I change the number of steps here up, it'll add more partitions. Now, 6 is probably fine. I could even lower it, and look how kind of crunchy the line gets, right? We go down to 0. Again, depending if you're trying to make something that looks like it's out of pipes, or if you're trying to make something that looks like it's out of rope or whatever, you might have more or less. You can also click Adaptive, and it'll automatically modify the complexity based on where the needs are. So see, notice that steps disappears, and it adds complexity where you need it and gets rid of it where you don't. So adaptive is kind of a nice tool if you're not really caring about how complex it is. Again, if I were bringing this into a game, but for this, adaptive is going to work really great because it's going to make it nice and smooth. And even if we move it and change it, what's cool is adaptive will auto update. So see, if I come up here and I start moving the shape, notice it starts adding complexity to where it gets closer or further away. It'll remove it. So that's kind of cool. All right, now I'm going to take thickness back down because really that's way too thick for a cord. Again, I'm just kind of eyeballing. I kind of like that. Now, if we really want to get fancy, one thing we can kind of do is we can actually hold down Shift and move something, and it'll make a copy of it. So if we want to move this over, this can be a little hard to get just right. But if I copy it, and here if we zoom in, you can see it a little better. So what I'm doing here, you can see there's my copy right next to the original. And some of you are already figuring out kind of why I did that. A lot of times you'll see chords look like that, right? For one will be the positive and one will be the negative. So look at kind of an easy way it is. It doesn't work absolutely perfect everywhere. You can see at this one spot, I might want to go and modify the one chord to move over a little bit if I was really being picky. But I just want to show you how easy it is to make a duplicate as well. All right, now I don't have the plug made, but we could of course use those same tools we were using up to now to create the plug. You could draw an outline of the shape and extrude it up to create the actual prongs. If I worked off a picture, I could draw those prongs even in something like Illustrator Photoshop and bring them over. Or we could even use it using some of the tools we'll be using next time. As well. There are so many cool modifiers in here and so many cool tricks to create 3D models. You'll see once you kind of start figuring out some of those tricks, the models can be pretty easy to put together. Okay, hopefully guys' lamps work out.